Hello, everyone, and welcome to our dive into trade conflicts from the 1450s to the 1750s. This is the really fun stuff in history with tons of wars, battles, and conflicts, all to see who would come out on top at the end of this competition. Let's start with the background a little bit. Now, before 1450, there was a lot of trade through the Trans-Saharan Network, Silk Road, and the Indian Ocean Trade Network. If you want to learn more about those, please pay us money. Empires like the Song Dynasty, Mali, and the Delhi Sultanate were seen dominating these networks. Superficially, the Song and later Mongols, Yuan and Ming, controlled major parts of the Silk Road and promoted commercial growth and innovations like paper money. The Mali Empire in West Africa thrived on the trans-Saharan gold and salt trade, making cities like Timbuktu major commercial hubs. The Delhi Sultanate and other Indian states controlled the Indian Ocean port cities and before Europeans arrived. Now remember that, because that's going to become really important as we progress into the future.
The prompt is the age of exploration ushered in competition with various empires. Compare the political, economic, or cultural impacts of two trade conflicts in either the European, Asian, or American regions from 1450 to 1750. This is an example of a comparison prompt. Specifically, Source 5, the picture of Aurangzeb's hunting expedition and Mughal army support this prompt by explaining the political impacts of trade conflicts. This image reflects the Mughal Empire's political structure and the military power necessary to maintain control of internal trade routes and regional commerce. The strong presence of Mughal soldiers behind Aurangzeb demonstrate how Asian empires relied on centralized authority and organized militaries to manage internal conflicts, protect caravans, and maintain political stability, essential for controlling trade flowing through India, even during mere hunting expeditions. First, trade conflicts affected political structures and diplomacy between empires. Source 1 shows this because the treaty shows Spain and Portugal responding to early trade competition by turning diplomacy to avoid war. By dividing all newly discovered lands outside Europe along a meridian in the Treaty of Tordesillas, both empires politically formed their claims and strengthened state control over exploration. It shows how global trade rivalry forced empires to create new political systems and international agreements to determine who controlled trade routes and colonial territories. Additionally, Source 6, which was about Columbus's letter to Ferdinand and Isabella, reveals how exploration directly expanded royal political influence. Columbus describes the political systems of the Caribbean islands while justifying Spanish dominations, reflecting how monarchies used trade and exploration to strengthen their authority over new territories. It also shows how political power was projected across the Atlantic through governance structures, forced labor, and conversion efforts that accompanied trade expansion. In short, trade competition drove empires to assert political dominance through treaties, military organization, and colonial governance.
Next, we have the economic impacts. Source 3 details this with the Embargo Act of 1807. During the Napoleonic Wars between Britain and France, both countries attempted to restrict trade to devastate each other's economies, and to do so, both seized American merchant ships and drowned American cargo exports. To respond to this, Jefferson came up with the Embargo Act of 1807, which cut off all American exports mainly to Britain and France. This, however, harmed American citizens more than the people in Europe, as farmers struggled to sell their crops. This act was repealed in 1809, but it led to disastrous economic impacts. Source 7 also supports this. It shows England authorizing merchants to reclaim and fortify nutmeg-producing islands of Poloron. The source highlights the economic states of the Anglo-Dutch rivalry and how states saw economic competition as justification for military action. Notice how this connects to the political impacts of trade conflicts. To summarize, economic impacts included disrupted trade networks, violent competition over luxury goods, and state policies designed to damage enemy economies. Stopa.
So let's have a quick recap of what happened. First, trade conflicts majorly shaped political structures. Empires used treaties, armies, and new governance systems to control trade routes and assert dominance. Second, economic rivalries drove countries into violent competition over resources like spices, while embargoes and restrictions devastated global economies and disrupted global trade. Third, cultural impacts were huge. Religious divisions deepened in Europe, and indigenous groups like the Choctaw experienced massive cultural change when imperial power shifted. And remember, if If you understand the patterns, you'll never get tricked on the test. Good luck on the Era 2 exam and thank you for watching. Review your notes, go through the AP practice questions, and absolutely crush that test.